Hey there, Pinpoint Players. Tim here with the Pinpoint Player Podcast. I'm joined tonight with my buddy Rambo.
Hey, everybody.
Tonight, we're going to take you down a lane. The lanes of some of the greatest games in one of the most popular franchises that I'm sure everyone has been familiar with. There's an enormous number of current players in this franchise. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Grand Theft Auto, the game series.
We're going to talk about a little bit about the beginning. We're going to talk a little bit about the middle. But then we're going to get into the meat of it, the end, the present day, and where we think it kind of goes from here. And I'm excited to talk about this one because for me, this goes all the way back to the early 2000s from when I started playing it. And I assume that's when you started playing it too.
It's roughly around there, yeah. Early 2000s with Grand Theft Auto 3.
Same here.
But there were some prior installments to the game. And what's really interesting about the Grand Theft Auto series that I discovered was that there are actually 3 eras that the companies who put the games together consider each games and the era that they represent. Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 are part of the 2D era, and they are isolated in their own worlds. The only things that are the same are
the names of the cities.
Brands, the names of the cities, and characters. They can interchange, but they're all in their own separate worlds. So the events of Grand Theft Auto 1 did not take place in Grand Theft Auto 2. They were in the same city, but they were
separate entities.
Exactly. And that was one era of Grand Theft Auto. Now in 2001, when they did Grand Theft Auto 3, they started with the 3D era. So the prior events of Grand Theft Auto and Grand Theft Auto 2 were null and void. Grand Theft Auto 3 was its own fresh start in the 3D era. So that's its own separate era as they jumped forward. They jumped to the next era, which they're calling HD era.
That was what GTA 4, I assume?
Yep, that's correct. GTA 4 in 2008. Funny enough, there's only 2 mainstream games in this era, and we're still in this era.
Which we'll get into a little bit in a second, yeah.
We have been talking about this for a while, Pinpoint Players. If you've been listening to our podcast at all, this is no surprise.
That's right, and so we figured with that, we would do a whole episode on this because we figured it deserves its own episode.
We really do. We really did put together the pieces for this episode over the last season, I'd say. We've been really hammering at this. We wanted to thank the Pinpoint Players for tuning in for the season finale of Season 3. We wanted to thank you so much. I hope that you enjoy this wonderful episode.
Definitely. So with that, let's get into it. So
yes, so the eras, yeah. So things started off in 1997 with Grand Theft Auto in the 2D era.
That's right. So originally developed for just the PS1, and then there was later a release on PC, and apparently a release on MS-DOS. So that's how long ago that was.
Yeah,
and eventually,
too.
The game, I guess, from what I'm seeing here, looks like it was ported to the Game Boy. Wait, hold on. What?
Yes, ported to the Game Boy Advance.
Game Boy, but it says
Game Boy Color. Game Boy Color.
Game Boy Color. Hold on a minute. I got a editor note fact check here. Okay, coming back in after that. The original Grand Theft Auto was developed for MS-DOS, but was later then ported to Microsoft Windows, PlayStation, and the Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Color version was technologically unabridged, which was quite a technological achievement due to the sheer size of the cities converted tile to tile for the PC original, making it many times larger than most Game Boy Color games because of the handheld's limited hardware. To cater to this target younger generation, however, the game was heavily censored with gore and swearing removed. I'm impressed they even did that. I had no idea.
For tile. You said tile for tile. So they were able to cram the original PC version of Grand Theft Auto onto a much more limited hardware.
Yes, folks, I'm just learning this for the first time because I had the page in front of me as just kind of a quick reference, but I saw Game Boy Color. I thought somebody in Wikipedia screwed up, mislabeled, and meant to say, oh, they are obviously meaning Game Boy Advance, a few years later. Nope, Game Boy Color. So that's impressive. I'm sure the game runs at like 10 frames a second, but on the other hand, credit where credit's due for them to port it onto something with that little of hardware.
Yes, credit is due where credit is due. That is a DMA design, which is now Rockstar North.
Yep, quick note on that. So yeah, DMA Design was originally a developer over in the UK and was founded in 1987 by David Jones. And the only other thing I'll say on that is they had a bunch of other games that they developed, but they were mostly of the side-scrollery and kind of platformer genre. Their biggest hits being games like Shadow of the Beast and Lemmings. Lemmings was an awesome platformer game where you had to guide your little humanoid characters from the beginning to the end with a bunch of other things in the middle that will kill you. And they released Lemmings, and oh no, more Lemmings. And they took from what they knew at those games. Oh, and there was also Lemmings 2: The Tribes. And all the worlds of Lemmings. And Christmas Lemmings 94. Wow, okay, there were a lot of Lemmings games.
They really liked those Lemmings.
I mean, it was a good game series. But anyway, shifting back to the GTA. So, they took their side-scroller and knowledge from those previous games that they made from 87 and carried it forward to Grand Theft Auto in 1997. Originally, they were making a racing game. However, from what I'm reading here and just from my notes on it, it began development as a game titled Race and Chase, in which a player controlled a police officer pursuing criminals. However, the game was considered dull, and the concept of playing as a criminal was adopted instead. But here's the thing they did that happened when the game was being developed. So apparently, there was a developer error in the game where you, the player, would encounter these very aggressive police officers where in the code, the police officers were extra aggressive toward you. So instead of just driving by you or maybe just trying to maybe arrest you normally, they would try and ram into you and they would like just not stop chasing you if maybe you were doing something bad. So developers seized on this because they liked the organized chaos of this. And they found a way to make it into a full-fledged world where you're a criminal going and doing missions with a large world that you can kind of explore into it. And that's what made the game stand out in the long run, because you went from intending to be a simple racing game where you're the cops to this full-fledged open world, which was kind of novel at the time. It's not the first open world game, but the idea of you exploring a place to your own leisure and content, that was pretty cutting edge, especially back then, especially for the mid to late 90s. So they released that in 97 to actually pretty good praise. Then after that, they released GTA 2, and I will admit, full disclaimer, I've never played the first Grand Theft Auto or Grand Theft Auto 2, but people seem to like them, even though they were top-down games, and even though the era at the time was demanding 3D-style games. I think because of the open-world nature and because of the organized chaos and because you had police and other gangs chasing you and wanting to kill you, it gave it a fresh vibe that DMA Design, ran with it and kept going with it. And they carried that into, like I said, Grand Theft Auto 2. And then the one that took the series off and took it by storm and has not stopped since, Grand Theft Auto 3. And that's where Tim and I come in.
Yeah, it is. So it's interesting that they did choose to make those types of games, DMA Design, the top-down. I really think it's funny that they just had a little developmental error in the coding, and the police just were more aggressive than they should have been, or they anticipated to be.
But it's amazing that happened, because that's why we have the games we have today.
Yeah, it is. When you mentioned that, the only thing that I thought of was, yes, the cops in Grand Theft Auto are way too aggressive. I remember in Vice City, the helicopter, if you had them chasing you too long, they would have very funny dialogue.
Oh, I love that dialogue.
Yeah, that aggressive-ness and the dialogue in Vice City was great. It was just like, stop or we'll shoot you. No, we can't say that.
It's like, if I shoot him, if I kill him, do I get a medal? You get 2.
2. So, I mean, going throughout the series, they did pick up on what made them a strong candidate, especially since during that time, there was a multitude of mediums for games to be. The Game Boy games, which worked very well for a lot of games, specifically for Game Boy and portable. There was computer gaming, which Grand Theft Auto started as. And then there was mainstream games where more consoles like the PlayStation 2, the Dreamcast, the Nintendo 64. There was a large market for games to, be sold to. So it's interesting that they started with the 2D and then it evolved into the 3D. It makes me wonder if that was their original intention or if that's just the way they were swept up in the current of all the hype of the games.
I think, so a couple things. I think they always intended to release for the mass market with the the main platforms, like because the game came out on PS1 and Windows. I think they always had a intention for a kind of a mainstream audience, but I will say that I think it's like you said, they got swept up. The world was moving on to a 3D open world, and they figured like, well, we can't just sit on our laurels and do this 2D stuff again. So DMA Design became Rockstar North. What I'll say on that is in '97, DMA released GTA. And then the company was acquired by Gremlin Interactive. Following the release of GTA 2, Gremlin was acquired by Infogames, or Infograms, interesting word, who sold DMA Design assets to Take-Two Interactive, and they've been the publisher ever since. And then, after the release of GTA 3, DMA Design was renamed Rockstar North and became a Rockstar Games label, and then the rest was history. So I wanted to kind of give a little bit of context there for everyone.
I thought that, yeah. It's interesting how game companies evolve, and Rockstar North is probably one of the largest gaming. I mean, they've won multiple accolades.
Of course, yeah, they've been in the industry for a bit.
Yeah, they actually hold some of the world records for largest sales, largest number of copies produced in a single game. Fun little factoid: GTA 5 made $1 billion in 3 days.
Oh yeah, I remember that. The midnight release, everybody wanted a piece of it because it was super hyped game, because everybody always wants the new GTA game, which we'll get into more of that and what we think of that in a little bit.
Oh, a little bit. But DMA Design rebranded themselves Rockstar North, and obviously it was to much success considering they've held multiple records, and they made $1 billion in 3 days.
Yep. But getting back to GTA 3, I got to talk about my first exposure to it. So I did not know GTA 3 was coming out at the time. I had no idea of it because at the time, my family, we didn't have a PS2. We didn't have the Xbox. We had a kind of a family laptop that could play some games. But the point is, I didn't hear about GTA 3. Then I went over to a friend's place, and he had a cracked version of GTA 3 where it didn't have any dialogue. Like, the dialogue was just kind of stripped out. It was clearly the bootleg game, but in essence, it was GTA 3. It was just obviously got from somewhere on the internet. So I saw him play it, and I'm just like, oh my god, you can get in this car and go over here and do this and do all that. You can run people over, shoot them. It's just like, oh my god, this is crazy. Look at all these things you can do. And I was immediately hooked just seeing him playing it for an hour. Just like, I gotta have this game. I gotta have this game. So again, we didn't have a PS2 at the time, but luckily there was a PC release. So I asked them, and this is back before, parents knew better. So I asked them hey, could I have Grand Theft Auto 3, for birthday or Christmas? I forget, which was closer, but I ended up getting the game, putting the game on PC, and I played that game for so many hours, turning on and off all the cheats, spawning the vehicles, doing racing glitches. There was one where if you could trap one of these Infernus or whatever racing cars in your garage, your car was bulletproof, which was crazy for other missions. And I remember, doing cheats remember there was one where you can make your car hover, and I remember turning that on so that way I could drive to the rest of the game, because I remember the first part of the game was locked. You had to complete enough missions, then you lock the second island, and then you lock the third island. And it was fantastic. Oh my god, it takes me back just remembering all that. Yeah.
Dude, that's amazing. I didn't realize that you could turn on bulletproof car. Your car becomes bulletproof just by.
Oh no, it was like a little hack not a little hack, but it was like a little glitch in the game where there was a race in the GTA 3 on the first island, and the race goes by your first hideout. So if you could somehow force one of those cars into your garage where you keep your car, that car then becomes yours, but it also becomes bulletproof. But it's one of the cars driven by the AI. But the problem was that car, if you got hit more than 3 times by other cars, it would start to catch on fire. It was very fragile of a car, but it was bulletproof.
That's amazing. Oh,
and it helped me beat the last mission because of that. But anyway.
So for my experience growing up, we had a small little video store called Video Horizons.
It's that place.
And me too. But they did, very well for themselves in a small community. They rented game consoles and rented games for a week or two. And I rented PlayStation 2 with Grand Theft Auto 3. I was underage, but my mom would go and rent it for me.
Also, nobody cared back then, too.
Well, they actually did, because
Really?
One time I called and reserved the system and the game, and my mom went to go pick it up. And a Winchester PD officer was renting out a movie, and they saw my mom taking the PlayStation 2 and Grand Theft Auto 3. And he goes, I hope that you're not... this is an officer talking to my mom. He goes, I hope you're not renting that for your son. You know, if he's underage, you know, you can kill police officers in that game. Did you know that? And my mom was just like, oh my God, my kids are not playing this game. So I was not allowed to play that game anymore.
Oh,
Funny
no.
enough, you got yourself a PC copy, which was smart, because I did the same.
Nice.
But my computer was so small compared to the game that I was running on like 2 or 3 frames a minute.
Oh.
So I would...
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I would start the car, I would get into the car, I would start moving the car, I would get up, I would start my laundry, I'd put the dishes away, I'd come back, and we'd be just down the bridge on the first mission. Just down the bridge. You've just broken out of the police. See, I know this first mission by hand because I witnessed it frame by fucking frame.
Poor Clyde trying to get out of the robbery. Nope, He got screwed over. You know this.
Yep. You were in the police bus, and the car is there, and you're out of the bus, and you're getting into the car, and you're driving. And then he drops you off, and he tells you, put some clothes on, go see Luigi at a strip club, take his girlfriend to his apartment. You made $100. That's about as far as I would get in the PC version. No save file. I couldn't save. That required too much memory.
So what did you do?
So,
how'd you get the full experience?
So, I mean, eventually we became of age and purchased. One time my brother took my mom's credit card and bought a PlayStation 2 on her credit card and said, yeah, she won't notice. Who's going to notice? How would she know?
Maybe they get a statement at the end of the month, but who's counting?
Yeah, when there was a $200 extra missing from my mom's credit card account, she was just like, where did this $200 go? So
it was a fraudulent charge. Look, it happens.
Yeah, GT, how did you get that new PlayStation 2?
Just my paper route, I was able to cover it.
Yeah, I won it at a raffle at school.
Yeah, Winchester gave good prize.
Winchester did. But yeah, I enjoyed playing Grand Theft Auto 3 on the PlayStation when I could. And what I really enjoyed about playing the game was when you were in between missions, you could come up with your own missions to do. Like, I would try and find a Hummer, whatever that truck was.
Oh my God, what was it called?
I would try and... I forget what Patriot? It was called, but maybe, yes, I think it was.
I think it was called the Patriot.
I would always be like, okay, I did the mission, I've got the money. Let me go scour the town. Let me go scour the city, see if I can find that specific truck. It had to be blue. It had to have the back square thing on it. And I was like, yeah, my dude's got the truck now.
Other times they handled like shit, though. I remember that.
The cars weren't great, but the other thing I would do would look for this one specific hobo character that would just kind of like looked like they were, I don't know, an old woman, or they were brown and they just looked, I don't know, decrepit or something. Not brown in the skin, like their clothes, they looked like, they were a vagabond of some kind. I would always try and find all the vagabonds in the city and throw Molotovs at them. I don't know why, but I was like, hey, I finished my mission. Let me go reward myself. Let me go Molotov a homeless person.
Hey, man, I'm sure the LA mayors back in the 1950s would have enjoyed you.
Yeah, but entering the 3D era for Grand Theft Auto was probably the wisest move for them, since they had already backed a very aggressive police officer system, as well as an open world feel to being a criminal. It was just natural for them to take the next step to a 3D realm And what we were gifted were some interesting expansions in that same realm. But in 2002, we got Vice City on PlayStation 2, Xbox, as well as Windows OS.
It was a good time because we kind of got a slew of releases over that time span. I mean, we left the 2D era. We're in the 3D era. 3D era, as you said earlier, had just a large wealth of games that were just so fun to play, and that has so much nostalgia. We can go back to it today and probably have a good old time because you just start playing again on PC and you just enjoy yourselves. But the success of GTA 3, naturally, we got to release a sequel, GTA Vice City.
And Vice City had some expansions from Grand Theft Auto 3. In Grand Theft Auto 3, you couldn't fly a helicopter. In Vice City, you could, which was... I always enjoyed flying the helicopter.
Yeah, and the military helicopter, which would take you across the city in no time flat.
Yep.
And the seaplane, which, by the way, I remember... And so in GTA 3, there was a plane. It was the Dodo. It was a piece of crap that couldn't fly more than, 30 seconds in the air. You can't fly... You basically glide, and that's it. It was terrible. I remember that.
It wasn't a lot of fun. But what they were able to do was they set the groundwork for the development of that. In later installments, they would expand all of those unique things marvelously, in my opinion. But there was always something that someone enjoyed about the games specifically. And Vice City and San Andreas really gave the gamers the option to really explore those avenues with their characters. Later on, with San Andreas, you were able to increase statistics in your character for running, for strength, for being obese, for flight, for driving.
I think it was one of the only games that did that, where it's kind of an RPG element, where you try and level up your strength, you level up your stamina, you try and level up your swimming skills. I think that was one of the only games that did that, actually. In fact, I'm looking at the list of GTA games, and I don't think any others did that. They had just your base,
no.
You have your health, you can lose your health, and that's it. I mean, later games had regenerative health, but other than that, you had health. It would either be 0 or 100 or somewhere in between, but that was the only one where you had stats too as well. It was, looking back on it, it's kind of interesting they just didn't continue that.
That's actually one of the reasons that San Andreas is my favorite Grand Theft Auto game in the 3D era. I loved Vice City. Vice City introduced dialogue with your main character, which was fascinating because it was played by Ray Liotta, and it really gave that kind of Scarface meets Goodfellas swagger.
Oh, it was perfect. It was the perfect blend of all those cinematic masterpieces of its day.
Yeah.
And I loved it. You truly want to explore it, drive all the 1980s style cars. It was a fantastic game. And also the clothing, the Miami Beach vibes. It was great. I loved it.
It was a great game, but when we're talking about the 3D era and going forward between Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, I'd have to say San Andreas was the most expansive, it was the most involved, and it had the most for you as a player to do.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it was the largest map at the time.
The vehicles that you could fly, drive, like you said, the level up stuff, the RPG elements, just the expansiveness of the world. Mount Chiliad. I mean, do you know how many times I drove cars off Mount Chiliad? Every time.
Every time. That's where I learned to do that. I mean, when we talk about driving cars off mountains, it's clearly Grand Theft Auto 5, but San Andreas was the first scaled mountain. Dude, I would love to get into the stunt plane and try and do donuts. I'd do rings of smoke around Mount Chiliad. I would try and do that so many times, but I would crash every time.
You stall out, right?
It was so fun. Yeah, it got to a point. It was just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
By the way, speaking of fun things in the GTA games, I'm just going to go back here for a sec real quick. In GTA 3, one of the most difficult things as a game I made for myself was... So, do you remember in GTA 3, if you got 6 stars, back when they did 6 stars, you have the army chasing you?
Yes, the rhinos, the tanks.
Yeah, those things where if they just touch your car, your car will explode instantly. So, this was actually one of the hardest challenges, and I challenge anybody to go do this even today. If you can go from your original hideout in GTA 3 to the airport on the 3rd island and back to your hideout in one life, congratulations, you did something that was really insanely difficult, because that was a challenge I tried to do for myself, and I was only ever able to do it twice, and I wasted so many hours trying to do it just for the heck of it. And it's tough because the rhinos will kill you in one hit, and then the army have these M16s that will basically whittle your health down from full to nothing in about 2 seconds. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember. I remember the sound for their guns too. It was like
a spraying noise.
Yeah. Funny enough, I never completed Grand Theft Auto 3.
I did only once. I remember playing it and beating it as a kid, but then I never went to go play the whole story again. I was just like, not that it was bad. I just never went back around to beat it.
I really felt connected to the Syndicate. When I was recruited by the Yakuza, I felt like I had betrayed my family. So I was like, well, I don't want to continue playing the game. Once I got onto the second island, once that bridge opened up, I was like, I betrayed my family. I'm going to stop participating in this life now.
Oh man, it only gets crazier from there, dude.
That's just an interesting factoid on my end about GTA 3.
Oh, definitely.
I never finished the game.
Yeah, as you said, San Andreas was your favorite. San Andreas was my favorite too, for all the reasons I said. And
oh yeah, of course.
And then that's in the finishing off the 3D era. What's interesting about the 3D era was the biggest collection of games you had, starting with GTA 3 in 2001, and you kind of ended the era with, I'm looking here just in timelines, you had Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories, which, as you can surmise, took an expansive view of the Vice City narrative. It was a prequel that was set 2 years before the events of Vice City, and Liberty City Stories, I think, was a successor in terms of timeline. The point was you had a large content, a large kind of connected world, and I never got to play those expansions myself, but from what I've heard of other people playing them and the reviews I've seen of them, they helped enhance the experience overall and gave you more reasons to go back to that open world and explore, drive around, and do the missions.
I imagine that it filled in a lot of mysterious things, like it laid the groundwork for things that you saw or, participated in with the original game. Pinpoint players, if you guys have played Liberty City Stories or Vice City Stories, let us know down below what you thought of the games themselves. Were they kind of just sloppily put together cash grabs, or do you think that they actually wanted to expand the story and through the gameplay really made an effort? Let us know. Just going off of what Rockstar is doing now, it could be either in my mind, because it is during the good era of what they're doing for gaming. I agree. I also see that the 3D era has the bulk of the games that Rockstar has produced for the Rockstar Grand Theft Auto series. You had 3, you had Vice City, San Andreas, you have something called Grand Theft Auto Advance. I imagine that's the game.
I actually played that one. It was actually pretty good. It was basically GTA 3, but in kind of Game Boy Advance version. It wasn't not to say that it was the same. It was just, I think you played as somebody else. You're going through the same city, same kind of setting. And I played it. It's definitely a shallower version of GTA 3, but for a small little package on the Game Boy Advance playing around, it kind of reminds me of when I've seen it now, gameplay I've seen of GTA 1 and GTA 2, that top-down, world where you're trying to drive around. And it was on Game Boy Advance. So, again, I played it. I thought it was pretty good. I beat the story and I never went back to play it again. So I will say that's the one knock against it. No replayability. You just, no incentive to go back like the other ones.
So, yeah, all right. They gave you the meat of the game as opposed to the meat and potatoes, which is you have the stories and the missions, but you also have the freedom. That's impossible. It's tough to do on such a limited cartridge. But
Exactly.
They did Vice City. Yeah, they did Vice City, San Andreas, the Game Boy Advance, Liberty City Stories, and Vice City Stories, all within the few years, about 6 or 6. Yeah, roughly a game a year.
Yeah, not bad, guys. It was a good time. It was a good time in the franchise, no doubt. But
it certainly was.
But moving on ahead to now what we consider the HD era and what everybody else considers too. We started off with GTA 4, which, if you can believe it, it is the only GTA main entry game that I've never actually beat the story.
I also haven't beat the story. I got to a point where I was annoyed at all of the phone calls
from Roman.
I was getting from Roman.
He wanted to go bowling, man.
Like, yes, it's your cousin. I know, but it was like I don't know what it was about the design. There was something very off about the design with its new high quality graphics. Didn't feel like a Grand Theft Auto game. There was something too bright about it. There was something too, I don't know, fake. The cells, the CG for the character designs just felt like they were hollow.
I'll admit it did feel different. It felt maybe at first jarring because I honestly can't quite remember what I thought of that, when it came out in 2008. But so I never got into the single player at all. So what happened was I saw in the dorms for the first time. Somebody else was playing it. I played it, but I could never really get into it for whatever reason, the same way they got into San Andreas. And it could be because of the HD. It could be how floaty the cars felt, just the realism. I couldn't get into it at first. So I never got around to playing the story. I'd only kind of hear the story through other friends that had played it at the time. But that said, I did eventually get the game, and what I found really fun was the multiplayer. The online races, the deathmatch. Like, I thought that was amazing. I thought that was really fun at the time, the GTA 4 multiplayer. And I thought, that was a good experience. But I never played the whole story. I never played more than the first couple missions, like when I did play it.
Me too.
Because at the time, that was back when Halo 3, come out, was still popular. Call of Duty 4 come out, was popular, and there were a couple other games that kind of grabbed my attention. And I just never ended up getting into it. I didn't actually play it, even the multiplayer I'm talking to you of now. I didn't even play that until about 2009, 2010. So I never really gave it a chance until then. And I still, to this day, have not completed the story. I vaguely know what the story is about, but not a whole lot. I'd have to honestly go look at a summary video to see what the story is because it's been that long.
Yeah, I don't know the story at all. I don't. I've never seen the story completed. I've never watched any of the story played out. I've played a couple of the missions, but very big turnoff for me about Grand Theft Auto 4. I don't know what it was. I remember buying a copy of Grand Theft Auto 4 for my brother, and my brother buying me a copy of Grand Theft Auto 4, and it was just like we each wanted our own copy of Grand Theft Auto 4. I don't remember why that was so important.
You should have just bought it for each yourselves instead of just each other. But I mean, at least you got the game.
It's interesting, yeah.
I will say this. I remember screwing around with you on the online a few times in the past, like on the Xbox 360. That was pretty fun. I remember a couple of times you and I did play the online, and for stuff like that, that was fun. Just, hey, let's drive around Liberty City and just do dumb shit.
I mostly remember online for GTA 5.
Same here.
I don't remember too much about GTA 4 or online for GTA 4.
We did have a stint. It wasn't very long. The one thing I remember that was fun about GTA 4's online was there was a swing set glitch where if you could wedge your car into this one swing set, I should say, I can't remember where in the map. I think it's in like the southwestern part of the map. Your car would go flying. You could go flying across half the map. And the best part was they never patched the glitch. So you could just park your car in there and you would go flying. It was hilarious.
I do remember that. Yeah, I remember how funny that was. How odd I was. Like, why is that occurring? Out of all
it still happens today. It still happens today.
Out of all the programming and out of all the code, for some reason, for the realism, they were really hyping that this is a really good, realistic game because they, improved the the graphics,
the animations, the driving mechanics. Yeah.
The physics generator? They were hyping the shit out of this physics generator. Oh, you're gonna see him get catapulted out of the window the way a real person would in real life.
And that got so annoying. That got so annoying driving around, I will say, because you could be driving and hit a car head on. And yes, in real life it would hurt a bit, but I remember in the game I feel like you would drive into another car at 30 or 40 miles an hour. In real life, you would just hit the wheel and it would hurt like hell. But in this game, you would go flying out and it'd be really annoying sometimes because you'd have to like get up and get back in your car. And it's just like, okay, I get it, guys, you're going for the realism there, but that was annoying realism because I don't think in GTA 5, even if you hit a car at like full tilt, you wouldn't go flying out.
No, they got rid of that.
Which is good. And that's one of the senses that I'm kind of glad that they worked away in that realism.
That whole physics generator and the realism about it, out of all of that coding and data, for some reason, that specific swing set, they were like, yeah, if you park your car here, you can fly to the moon.
That was hysterical.
Yeah, you can go to the moon. You can go to the moon from the swing set. All you have to do is park your car here. physics.
Forget it, guys. They heard it here. Don't buy GameStop if you want to go to the moon. Just go to that swing set.
Go to the swing set. Quit buying Doge.
So yeah, as you can surmise, folks, we never had the full experience with GTA 4 at all. And then, but that said, a lot of people did, and a lot of people really enjoyed it. It got worldwide acclaim, and fair enough. Like, it did deliver what it promised, and people liked it so much that Rockstar ended up developing 2 expansions to it. In 2009, they developed The Ballad of Gay Tony, and the same year, also, they developed The Lost and the Damned. I didn't play either of those either. Again, just going through this. Didn't play them either. Yeah. But I had friends that played them. My friend Pete, rest his soul.
Rest in peace.
He showed me the expansions, and The Lost and the Damned I wasn't really kind of a fan of in terms of the story mechanics. It just felt like it kind of felt like a crappier version of Sons of Anarchy, just to give you a sense of that. Ballad of Gay Tony's story, on the other hand, the characters look kind of, more fun, more fresh of a narrative. And it actually explained, and what's cool about these expansions is that it tied into the main story to kind of, again, give it another full experience. And it kind of explained a couple of the mysteries that the main story didn't wrap up. So in that sense, pretty cool. Again, didn't play them, but people liked them. They enjoyed them. And then that was it for GTA 4. You had those expansions. And then finally, here we are, folks. Modern day GTA 5, 2013. And when the game came out, I was in the midnight release line. I was excited to play it. I got it for Xbox. I got it for PlayStation 3, and I went home, installed the game. It took forever to install down the updates, but I waited. I played the intro mission, and I did the very first thing that I knew I had to do in the game. I went to Chiliad and drove right off it before going to bed. True story.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, same here. Before I get into Grand Theft Auto 5, I would like to say with Grand Theft Auto 4 that we're seeing from that point on going forward between 2009 and 2013, we're seeing the loss of these types of expansions, these games that continue the story of the main staple game. We used to have games like this. It's a shame that here we are and we don't have anything to expand off of with Grand Theft Auto 5. With, Grand Theft Auto, you had Grand Theft Auto London, 69 and 61. You had Grand Theft Auto 3 with Liberty City Stories. And Vice City with Vice City Wars. Stories. Oh, that's right. Chinatown Wars, a Game Boy Advance, I think it was.
Yep. But yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. There was expansions behind almost every of the main entries. I mean, Vice City Story. No, you're right. There was an expansion off of almost every main entry. The exception being GTA 3 and San Andreas. I don't think those had true expansions in that sense. And like San Andreas had no expansions. Like you could argue, you could argue Liberty Stories and Chinatown Wars were an expansion of GTA 3. Fair enough, but San Andreas didn't have any. But that's okay because San Andreas felt like a full, complete package. Fun fact: Las Venturas in San Andreas was the only part in the game that wasn't fleshed out fully because the developers kind of ran out of time. So you have the main strip where you have like some of the buildings, casinos, and that's it. That's the only other part. Otherwise, it's pretty barren, and they just ran out of time development-wise. So anyway, just wanted to kind of mention that because that was a fun little factoid I remember from back in the day. But yeah, like we're saying, we had expansions, and even in GTA 4, even in a new HD era, we had expansions. The base game came out in 2008. We had the expansions a year later. And then for 4 years, we sat waiting around for GTA 5. And then we got it. Credit where credit's due. We got it. Like, we were excited. I was excited to play the main story. I was super hyped for the GTA Online, the heist, which took forever to come. But I was really hyped. Yeah. I was super excited.
Yeah. I was also in the midnight release lines for GTA 5. I remember making sure that there was enough space on my PlayStation 4, and dude, some of the greatest times playing games with you guys was those heists on Grand Theft Auto 5. It was a lot of fun transitioning into the online world. Grand Theft Auto 5 expanded on all the things that made Grand Theft Auto special and unique in each of their games. There are plethora of missions for you to do. Boating, there are speed boating race games. There's a piloting game where you can learn to fly a plane.
You can play
There's
golf
a
together.
You can play golf.
You can literally play darts.
You can play darts. You can mountain bike. There are races for mountain bikes. It was a complete game in the sense that if you wanted to play a game inside of the game had the games. You know,
It had everything.
It was a cascade of what made Grand Theft Auto wonderful. It is essentially the essence of Grand Theft Auto, is what Grand Theft Auto 5 and GTA Online is. Through a developmental programming error, the cops were turned super aggressive. GTA 5 is the culmination of that programming error in that the cops in GTA 5 are super aggressive. What ensues is what makes GTA 5 the essence of Grand Theft Auto. I can understand in that sense why they haven't taken the games much further, because they have essentially made the game they were always going to make. They made their destiny, essentially. Once you find the Holy Grail, do you keep looking? Do you keep trying to make a new one? I can understand why they don't. However, as a consumer and as a person who investigates the type of products that they'd like to purchase before going into it, I do not like where they've taken Grand Theft Auto 5 in terms of fiscally. We've covered it in its own episode, microtransactions. It's the pit of where microtransactions gets its evil. It's the only thing that's keeping Grand Theft Auto 5 alive today. If they did not have microtransactions, they would need to rely on games and expansions. But this is just one facet of a multi-franchise operation. And who am I but a simple consumer to merely point out the goings-ons of this?
It's a real shame. Just to give even slightly more context. From 1997 until 2012, we had 14 games in a 15-year time span. And in the last 9 years, we've had one released on 3 separate systems now. The reason I say that is because I know it's going to be released on the PS5 and Xbox Series X re-release.
Yeah, it's going to be announced that they'll release it soon.
Yeah.
From the article that I read, it's Q4 announced. They're going to announce it through Q4, whatever that is.
Just later this year, I think sometime between September and December.
They're going to announce that it's going to be released for the upgraded systems.
Yeah, so that's the thing, folks. I get it. I get it in multiple ways. One, you can't compare the games of yesterday to today because the development times, the technology takes a longer to, fully realize and fully understand when making a game. I get that. But on the other hand, 15 games in 12 years, one game in 9 years, and I get, again, the development times and all that, but the idea of one game now being pushed along 3 generations, it's like, guys, come on. And I know why. With microtransactions, they found ways to pump more money out of players with shark cards, let them fly these crazy jets, fly these flying cars, other aircraft that can just blow other players up in the main lobby. It's like, yeah, okay, look, they're fun, they have their appeal, but honestly, these shark cards just add up. These are a lot of money. It's just guys, if you're going to spend this kind of money on video games, just go buy other games too. I'd rather people spend money on new games, and they're keeping this one alive by doing this. And in the microtransaction episode, so I won't get into too much detail of it. So, because if you want to listen, you can go listen to that episode. But this is what's causing, lack of development on this. It's yes, they still release, other multiplayer online missions for us to do, and online heists, but that's it. The whole point is to do online heists so you can get money. So that way you can spend it on in-game items. But oh no, you don't have enough money, so you're tempted to go get a shark card so you can try and cover the rest, or you just use the shark card to buy the whole thing outright. It's ridiculous. We're at this point, 8 years later, from the game being released on PS3 and Xbox 360, 2 whole generations ago at this point.
It is. It's ridiculous, because looking at this from a completely different angle, before I get into that, dude, you remember the prison heist?
Yeah. Of course.
Do you remember how hard we worked at the prison heist?
I remember how hard we worked, and I remember at the very end, you had to do is parachute down and have Andrew pick us up, and you died. I don't know how you died. But you died, and we had to do this heist all over again, folks.
I remember gliding into the water and seeing Tim is awake died. And I'm just like, oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I guess we have to do the mission again. And you and Andrew were just like, fuck this. God damn it, Tim. You had one fucking job. How did you die? In that sense, I can see where you guys would be like, well, I don't want to do the missions when Tim dies, so I'll go buy a shark card. I can understand that. But that is what makes playing the game fun.
The shenanigans.
The shenanigans. Exactly, dude. We have a great time telling that story because it pisses some of us off and it gets us riled up, and that is what shenanigans are all about.
And I will say, to GTA's credit, the online, we had plenty of shenanigans. Like, there were so many fun online moments. Like, I won't take that away. That's been great. I've enjoyed that. But I am ready to enjoy that in GTA 6. I'm ready for I'm ready for another online, experience. GTA 6, wherever it's set, let's make it so.
Yeah, like I was saying before, looking at this from another lens, there were people in college that I went to school with who hosted the Guitar Hero tournament that I won. They were game developers. They had ideas for games that they wanted to make. They were passionate about making games. Imagine, if you will, you are a game developer and Rockstar North comes up to you and says, would you like a job?
Yes.
You're immediately going to think, yes, of course, because you are a game developer and you want to develop games. If you are put into the Grand Theft Auto 5 realm of things, you're not game developing. You're not developing a game. You're developing extras and add-ons for a game. In a span of 1 to 2 years, Rockstar North was able to produce full-fledged games once a year or so. Between 2000 and 2002, they were able to develop Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City. 2 completely separate games with 2 completely similar scenarios, different characters, different voice actors, different models, different cars, different everything, almost, different setting, different time zones. But they were able to craft and develop individual things that separated them by games. They were separated by a game. Now, if you get hired by Rockstar North and you're a game developer, you're probably tasked with making a plane. And that's the job that you have for 1 year. Design a plane that someone will buy with a shark card. That must be the most soul-crushing experience. Here you are with wonderful ideas that you would like to one day expand into a game, a full-fledged game on your own. But here you're just being tasked with like designing a light pole, designing a bush, designing something. You're not a game developer anymore.
I know, you're just finding ways to make players pay extra money, and that's the frustrating thing. That's what it is now. In fact, again, I don't know how true this is, but I remember reading in 2014, maybe early 2015, that the voice actor that played Franklin, supposedly might have blown the whistle on, like, oh yes, we've got a single player expansion for GTA 5, where the rumor was that it was supposed to be before the events of GTA 5 with Franklin and Lamar, like, I guess following them and doing missions with them. And I figured, like, hey, that'll be cool when that happens, because you thought, well, since we had other single player expansions with the other games, we thought, like, we're entitled to this because this has always happened. Every other GTA game except for San Andreas has had some sort of single player expansion going all the way back to the 90s, but we never got it. And we never will. We're like 8 years into this. In fact, while you were speaking to that, I looked up and typed in Google, very simply, GTA 6. Somebody asked, what year is GTA 6? And Games Radar, I don't know how this article said, it didn't do anything. In fact, so all we have to go on is the word that GTA 6 was, quote, early in development as of April 2020. That makes it difficult to predict any sort of window release. We might at least hear of the game by the end of 2021 with a potential release in 2022. Now, keep in mind, this article, if it has a date, that would be very helpful. Oh, from 17 days ago. 17 days ago, so toward the end of May. All right. The problem is with these kind of articles, you have to treat them with a very, very big grain of salt, because honestly, potential release window of 2022, I doubt it because of the whole pandemic and because of GTA 5 still makes them a lot of money. So I honestly don't expect a release until 2023, if I'm being perfectly honest, at the very earliest.
Considering that they're considering porting it from PlayStation 4 and Xbox One to the Series 10 and PlayStation 5, why on earth would they release Grand Theft Auto 6? If they're going to port the old one, why would they port the old one and release a new one?
So here's my theory. I think they want to bleed a little bit more blood from a stone one more time with releasing it to this next generation. I don't like that they're doing this. Disclaimer. I don't like that they're doing that at all. But I think they're releasing it for one more generation, hoping to get one more series of sales for the game, one more series of shark card sales. And then I think finally, maybe 2 or 3 years after the new systems have kind of settled, then the new games have kind of settled, and people are more distracted by other games, they'll be like, all right, guys, here's GTA 6, finally. But that's only after they've released the game on 3 systems, shark cards, and other kind of nickel and diming in tow.
So just to give some context, why I'm so upset about, that going down, as of February 2021, more than 140 million people, according to GameStat, play Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PlayStation 4 alone. 140 million people on the PlayStation 4. 72.5 million people on the Xbox One and the 360. That's correct. The 360. They're still taking account to people playing on the 360. So a percentage of the 72.5 million people are still on 2 generations ago hardware. And according to Steam charts, on average, every 30 days, roughly 84,000 people are playing online on Steam. So to put that into context, you're going to port over roughly 2/3 of the entire population of the United States globally to PlayStation 5 and then ask them to buy Grand Theft Auto 6.
Yes.
Two-thirds of the entire population of the United States.
That's what they're asking.
My God.
That's what they're asking, and they're going to get away with it.
They might, because I feel like we have a chance nipping this in the bud so early, Pinpoint players. If you are someone who is interested in what we're discussing, we do have a chance here now. You can continue to play Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PlayStation 4. You don't have to buy it for the PlayStation 5. You can get Grand Theft Auto 6 on the PlayStation 5, which in my mind would be a better message to send to Rockstar.
I would say the one thing that makes it tough is if you have friends or family like getting the new systems and getting GTA 5, you feel almost compelled to get the game to like play with them. And it's like, I would say this, save your money for GTA 6 and convince them to get some other games on the system. Like, play something else. Let's move on from GTA. Let's move on from these microtransactions ain't going anywhere, unfortunately. Like,
they'll always be a part of it.
But we can at least control like the main games. We can at least control to an extent like what we want, and hopefully we can at least drive some of that change to an extent. I am hopeful for a GTA 6 at some point. I don't know when. I think it's going to be at least 2 years from this conversation at best.
I'd like to see if that is the case. I really don't see it happening. I feel like they're going to judge it based off of the sales of the transition, the porting, how many people go out and buy that PlayStation 5 copy of Grand Theft Auto 5. Because like you mentioned earlier, they had a full-fledged game in development with Franklin and Lamar that never occurred because it didn't need to.
I guess what I'm saying is I know in the long run they know that number of players playing the games is going to start to drop off, like a kind of a bell curve. Like, it's going to drop off, but then when it gets to around like a point here, I'm animating this to Tim, by the way, folks. Then they'll realize, all right, guys, now we'll drop GTA 6 because that'll get back on everybody's radar. GTA 5 will start to fade into obscurity, and then we're going to go through all this all over again with GTA 6. It'll be a good packaged single player as usual. It'll probably be a well robust online with even extra stuff that even GTA 5 didn't have. And then get ready for no expansions probably after that, unless you folks like you demand it. And there will be shark cards in the new one. All this is guaranteed, but man, at least it's like we can't fight shark cards like from happening because they're gonna just do it anyway. But at least give us something else to look forward to along the way, like a single player expansion would have been awesome for GTA 5. I would have personally liked to have seen Franklin like a year or two before the events of GTA 5 just to see that happen, but we didn't get that.
And it does come down to us. We are the consumers. They tailor what to make based off of what we want.
Exactly.
Sure, as the game developers, develop their own unique thing, they try and fail, and they learn from the failures what succeeds. So they're just in this period of success that's overshadowing us. So we got to remind them that we are what makes them successful. We gave them $1 billion in 3 days. We can take $1 billion away just as quickly.
I mean, we all banded together to let the PlayStation people know that do not just shut off the PSN store without some sort of solution. And because of that, we bought ourselves more time. And it's because of folks like you. And thank you guys for doing that. You guys made a difference. And if you guys can do something like that, you easily could do something like that with Rockstar. Let them know on social media what you really think about stuff like this. However you can, in whatever way you can, you should just let them know. If you don't like this, definitely tell them.
Yeah. Letting us know will also let them know, since that is how game developers do their research, by diving deep into the gaming genre community.
Before we wrap up the season, I want to say just one factoid about GTA. It's actually the second largest game franchise in terms of sales in the world. The only one that's ever sold more is Minecraft. Minecraft sold 200 million. GTA 5 has sold a very respectable 145 million games all time amongst its entire series. Not bad.
Jesus.
Not bad, guys.
I figured it was the second largest franchise, but I was going to say next to Call of Duty or Fortnite.
So, nope. Actually, neither of those are in the top 10.
No shit. That's awesome. That's terrible.
In terms of best-selling video games. But, yep, just wanted to say that. Fun little factoid. And the last thing I want to say is I wanted to thank everybody that's listened to this podcast from wherever you are in the world, locally and internationally.
Yeah. Checking our statistics. We want to give a big shout out to everyone out in Ohio, Texas, Washington, and Virginia. Thanks for listening, and hope you're enjoying it in your part of the country.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys from those states listening in, and there are a bunch of other states there too, but those guys from the states we just made have not budged, and we like new listeners, and we like that it's attracted so many people from just this country alone. But internationally, the story gets even crazier. We've had people from the United Kingdom, from Belgium, Canada, Mexico, Australia, Germany, Nigeria, Netherlands, France, Sweden, Chile, Switzerland, and New Zealand all listen to this show.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So from all those folks in all those countries I just named, thank you for giving this show a chance and listening to it. Maybe you only listen to one episode. Maybe you listen to a couple, but thanks for giving us a chance and, putting us on your podcast and your car ride to your work. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Hopefully that you're also sharing with your friends and tuning in and enjoying what we have to discuss. It's been a great journey going through the last 3 seasons. Rambo and I have learned a lot about making podcasts. We're continuing to improve, and we're responding to your feedback as quickly as we can. We want to thank everyone who listens. So, guys, thank you so much.
We really appreciate it. And to show us how much you appreciate it, if you really like our stuff, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. It greatly helps us with outreach, helps us get to a new audience. Same thing with a follow on Spotify. We're on Instagram at Pinpoint Players. Definitely give us a follow there because we still have only 8 followers, and we promise we're real.
Yes, we have more followers. We just need you to follow us on the Instagram. Not only that, but did you know we have a YouTube channel as well? We are the Pinpoint Players on YouTube. We have some wonderful content up there already. We have some great content planned for the future. It would really help us if you subscribe, and comment on the stuff that we have up there. You can also reach us by email, pinpointplayers@gmail.com. If you'd like to write us a fan letter or give us some suggestions on how we can improve or topics to discuss. We're completely open to receive those things.
And with that, thank you guys for tuning into another awesome season with us. And we hope you'll stick around as we continue this discussions with more topics in future seasons. So thank you guys for listening in, and we'll see you for the next season.
Take it easy, Pinpoint players.